as we are learning all of this from prosecutors and waiting to see what happens next. My lead source tonight is the Deputy Attorney General, Todd Blanche. And thank you, sir, for being here, because now we know, obviously, what the state plans to charge Tyler Robinson with. Do you expect to bring federal charges against him as well?
We're still looking at that, Caitlin. I mean, there's a lot of evidence to go through, and there's a big difference between the state charges, which are very serious, carry the death penalty, and charges that the federal government could potentially bring. So that's not something we need to rush and make a decision on. He's in custody. The state's already brought charges against him, and we're looking at all the evidence, some of which you've already been talking about tonight, Caitlin, to determine whether federal charges are appropriate. And if they are, yes, we will bring them.
Okay, because ABC News said that the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, when they interviewed her yesterday, told them federal charges are expected. But it sounds like that's still something that you are very much deliberating inside the Justice Department tonight.
Well, I think when you say when federal charges are expected is right. I mean, we're looking at everything we can do to bring charges if appropriate. But again, this isn't something we need to rush. This is something where the state has already brought charges. They brought charges that carry the death penalty. And so if at the right time federal charges are appropriate, of course we'll bring them.
Okay, and for people who aren't sure, not every murder is a federal crime. You need a federal angle, basically. So we'll see if you guys decide to move forward with that. Can I ask you, though, because Stephen Miller over at the White House said that he believed there was an organized campaign that led to Charlie Kirk's assassination. When you looked at the charging documents today, though, I didn't see a reference to one. Have you seen evidence otherwise on that front?
Like I said, this assassination happened less than a week ago. And so there's still a tremendous amount of evidence that we're going through, and there's a tremendous amount of documents that we're going through. What Stephen was talking about is something that we've seen all too frequently over the past several years, which is this spew of hatred and violence from certain parts of this country, and you have evidence of what this man was doing online. And so the idea that he was indoctrinated with violence and hatred that would result in what happened to Charlie is something that we're looking at. But it is way too early for us to say one way or the other whether we have evidence that suggests that there were organized groups that committed or helped commit this crime or gave him the motivation to commit this crime. That's something that we're looking at, and that's what Stephen said today too in his interview and his meetings about that, is that it's something that we're very focused on in this administration.
One thing the administration has also been focused on is talking about going after these left-leaning organizations. We've heard it from Stephen Miller, from the vice president, from President Trump himself. There has been some confusion over who exactly the administration is targeting. Can you say who that is?
I don't think there's confusion about who we're targeting, Caitlin. We've been very clear about who we're targeting, to the extent that there are organized groups raising money with the intent to organize individuals to commit acts of violence, whether it's against law enforcement, whether it's against individuals, whether it's against people in this administration, whether it's against Democrats. We're going to go after them. That's not been confusing. It's something that everybody's been very consistent on with messaging, which is that we're not going to stand by and let people behind the scenes fund people who are actually terrorists. And that includes people that are throwing rocks at ICE trucks, people who are assaulting officers during supposedly peaceful protests, which are not peaceful at all. That's what we're focused on. And there's no confusion within the Department of Justice that that's our focus.
But which groups specifically are you talking about?
Well, look, I'm not gonna name groups here. That's not fair to them. And you haven't heard people within the administration come out and name groups. That being said, we know that when there are these violent protests against ICE, against other individuals, that it is not just by luck or happenstance that those people show up with gas masks, that they show up with rocks, with chunks of brick. That doesn't just happen by sheer luck. There's an organized effort to do that, and that's who we're looking at.
Okay, I just think people have raised questions because there isn't any evidence that the assassin here, the suspect, was in a group. Obviously, as you say, you're still going through information, and obviously what that looks like. The president has said that in light of this, he'd consider naming the far-left anti-fascist group Antifa as a domestic terrorist group. But does designating it as that carry any extra significance under the existing law as it is tonight?
Well, whenever you identify an entity as a terrorist organization or a terrorist group, there's a certain amount of weight and power that carries within law enforcement, whether it's federal law enforcement or state and local law enforcement. And so, yes, of course, by the President of the United States designating an organization as a terrorist organization, as a terrorist group or a terrorist organization, that has a lot of power and it has a lot of weight. And it's something President Trump takes very seriously. As he said yesterday in the Oval Office, it's something that we're looking at. It's something that I think every American wants us to look at. And if it's right that they should be labeled as such, they will be.
You were in the Oval Office when the president was talking about that yesterday. He also talked about racketeering charges. At one point, he referenced the women that were protesting him at the seafood restaurant when he was at dinner the other night outside the White House. This is what he said in the Oval for those who missed it.
The people, there were a lot of people in the restaurant. I went there to show how safe, and it was safe. I mean, the woman is just a mouthpiece. All she was a paid agitator, and you have a lot of them. And I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against the criminal RICO, because they should be put in jail.
As you know, RICO has been used to go after like Al-Qaeda, MS-13, the Gambino family. How would something like that protest fall under a RICO charge?
That's not what we use RICO for only. RICO is available to all kinds of organizations committing crimes and committing wrongful acts, not just organized crime or ISIS or terrorist organizations. And so it depends. So is it, again, sheer happenstance that individuals show up at a restaurant where the president is trying to enjoy dinner in Washington, D.C., and accost him with vile words and vile anger, and meanwhile he's simply trying to have dinner? Does it mean it's just completely random that they showed up? Maybe. Maybe, but to the extent that it's part of an organized effort to inflict harm and terror and damage to the United States, there's potential investigations there. And that's what the president was saying yesterday in the Oval Office, and what he also has said in the days before that as well.
But were those women in the restaurant inflicting harm or terror or damage by protesting the president of the United States? I mean, they were just shouting basically in his vicinity.
I mean, repeat what you just said. I mean, honestly, so you're asking whether there's damage done by 4 individuals screaming and yelling at the president of our United States while he's trying to have dinner. That can't be a serious question. That cannot be a serious question. I mean, it's true that there's a difference between shouting and committing an assassination,
there were supporters outside,
which is what happened to Charlie. Well, it depends. There's nothing wrong with peaceful protests, and nobody has ever said so. Of all the people in this country, President Trump knows exactly what it's like to have people protest against him. But what he's talking about, and what the administration is talking about, is organized efforts by individuals who are not present at the protests, but they're funding these protests, and they're not protests. They're inflicting damage and harm and actually assaulting officers. They're damaging vehicles, and that's the conduct that we're trying to stop.
Well, I mean, people would argue about the ability to have free speech and to protest the government and criticize the government. Something that the Attorney General Pam Bondi said last night about free speech has gotten a lot of focus today. These were the comments that she made.
There's free speech and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society. We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech.
Does this Justice Department agree that what you would call, what some people would call hate speech, obviously is different definitions to different people, that is covered by the First Amendment?
No, we're not the Democrat Party. That's not what we target. And that's not in any way what the Attorney General meant, as she made crystal clear all day today. We are targeting violence. When there are individuals who are using words threatening murder, threatening violence, threatening to harm people, that's what we're targeting. And that's what's happening all too often in this country. And so, no, this isn't about the right to say whatever you want about me or about President Trump or about you. It's when you're threatening to inflict violence or harm on individuals. That's where this Department of Justice will not stand for.
But you would agree that hate speech is covered by the First Amendment?
Yes, of course hate speech is covered by the First Amendment, and everybody thinks that. The Republican Party and this administration believes in that more than most, having been subjected to what we've been subjected to for the last several years. And Charlie spoke about that repeatedly because it's true. And so, no, this is not about words that are used. It's about words that are used when they're threatening violence, murder, when they're threatening to kill people. That's what we cannot tolerate in this country.